Hello there and welcome to Cannibal Diva Chronicles. We're uplifting the downtrodden self-focus. I'm Cannibal Diva, and today I'd like to address some of the traits that you might notice in someone who has been abused, a man or a woman. It's very common to see people who have been abused being avoidant. The avoidant trait is one that they try to avoid getting into conflict with others, even when they are right in their stance. They try to avoid being put in any situation that's going to cause them to have to defend themselves or, explain themselves or their behavior. Most times it ends up causing the victim or the person who has experienced abuse to avoid being in a group or being in the midst of those that she would or he would fondly enjoy spending time with. This avoidant character has its positive traits because most times avoiding talking to others and being put in a situation where you have to constantly explain your actions protects that victim or protects that person who has been abused from feeling threatened or feeling like they're in an unsafe environment. Protecting themselves, therefore, would entail them not going out for many activities, not going to parties, for example, being by themselves and enjoying their own solitude, enjoying their own company, so to speak. Many people who have experienced narcissistic or toxic relationships enjoy alone time. They like being by themselves. They don't really like to be in a crowded space. This also relates to empaths. Empaths, to start with, even empaths that haven't experienced abuse, prefer their own company. They prefer being in the solace of their own environment because it takes a lot for them to be in the midst of a crowd. In that sense, they lose energy. Their energy is dispersed in the midst of a crowd. So therefore, when they're by themselves, they can retain that energy and focus that energy inwardly to providing and protecting their space and their peace. Another trait that you find with people who have experienced narcissistic abuse or toxic relationships is they prefer having one or two friends. They prefer having that close-knit relationships that is trustworthy or they consider to be more trustworthy. They prefer having just family most times in their lives who they can really trust. People who they've known for many, many years would be preferred over casual acquaintances who they just met. Some other traits that you might find with people who have been abused and who have been in a toxic relationship, like a narcissistic one, is aggression. This is a negative aspect of the abused victim. Many people have aggression from being treated aggressively over many years because they have been in an environment that has not been a trustworthy one, an environment that has piled insults and accusations upon them, and many of the times unfair accusations, and this mistrustful or distrustful environment has caused them to become very aggressive and very untrusting or distrusting of people around them. And with the slightest provocation, many people who have experienced toxic relationship will lash out. And it might seem as if they are not friendly or they are very agitated or sensitive, but you must try to remember that they have experienced so much toxicity in their lives that they have no longer any more room to tolerate any slight infringement on their rights or any perceived infringement on their rights. And they will not hesitate to tell anybody off that they feel has slighted them in any way. This is a negative attribute that comes out from the narcissistic environment because many of these people are sweet-natured people who have just turned out to be protective of their emotions because of what they have experienced. And they might come across as being negative or being very aggressive because of the kind of treatment that they've suffered silently for many years in the privacy of their home. While the narcissist or the toxic person has gone about seeming to be the friendly, loving, kind, patient, humble, and admirable person. This person who has been abused for many years might then seem to be the one at fault because of the lash out and the way the person tends to lash out at the slightest provocation. Another attribute that you'll find in the abused victim or the toxic relationship, from a toxic relationship, is many of them suffer from side effects that may seem to be one to do with their self-image or their body image. Many people, for example, you might experience them being very watchful of how they eat, what they eat, and how they ingest their food. You might then see conditions and diseases like anorexia and bulimia begin to exhibit themselves. And these are secondary effects or side effects of not dealing inherently, inwardly, with what is going on psychologically with them and what they have experienced over the course of time at the hands of the narcissist or the abuser. So therefore, many people who have experienced this kind of attack on themselves, on their emotions, and on their self-image would need to seek help, psychological help, so to speak. They would need to find friends that they can trust, family members that they can trust, to speak about these things that they've experienced, not being afraid to express the deepest anguish and the deepest thoughts that they suffer or they experience in their silent time that plagues on their peace and distracts from their joy on a daily basis. It's important to speak about those things that hurt them, not to dwell on them, and not to continue to speak negatively about the past, but it would be important to express those thoughts and those feelings that continue to plague them in the secrecy of their private time. By speaking it out, it loses its power. And as time goes on, it becomes a distant memory. At least that is what we hope will entail, or what would result from speaking out about her past or his past, about the abuse that they've experienced. Another trait of the abused victim would be silence. Many of them are very silent. Many of them decide not to speak about their past. A few people become almost pretentious in their bid to act as if all is well. And these are the ones that I feel we need to worry greatly about, or more about, because not speaking about it at all is not an answer to the abuse they've experienced. Speaking about it, I would believe, is a more positive approach, because I believe that a problem shared is a problem solved, or a problem shared at least is halved in a way, in a sense. Because speaking out, like I mentioned just now, it releases that anguish, and it causes that anguish and that memory to lose its power over the victim. There are many stories on social media nowadays, unfortunately, where you hear about people who have experienced narcissistic relationship. Those ones that are plagued constantly about the emotions and the bad feeling that they have been left with. It almost seems as if all their good nature and all their hope and all their joy and all their peace has been swapped by the abuser. And in its place, they have lost joy. They've lost all desire to continue to exist in this world. And it's in those cases that you see those that decide to take their own lives. You see those who seem to have everything to live for, decide within themselves, silently, most times without expressing their anguish to their family or friends. You see them take that ultimate step, which I always believe to be, and which I agree to be, making a permanent decision on a temporary solution that could have easily been resolved. Nobody, I repeat, nobody or no mortal, no spirit even, should have the power over your desire to live. There's a higher power after all, and we believe that God created every one of us with a purpose to accomplish upon this earth that we live in. And therefore nobody should take that purpose away from us by their own selfish, vindictive, and wicked actions. I'll bring to mind the story of a woman called Bimbo. I forget her name, but I'll leave it at that, who, in the bid to save her toxic relationship or save herself from the results of a toxic relationship ended up losing her life. Another lady who I believe many of us, these are people who are generally Nigerian, so I'm bringing the Nigerian stories to the forefront. Another lady who was young, very pretty, seemed to be a model, looked so beautiful, and she was very well educated, decided to jump in front of a moving train just last year. She was the daughter of a young Nigerian man who came out to publicly discuss how his daughter had lost his life in the hands of a liar, a conniver, and an abusive narcissist who had promised her the world and ended up giving her hell in his stead. These are the kind of stories that make me continue to discuss issues as these, in the hope that we can save one life, in the hope that we can deliver without talk and without prayers, and with just that one piece of advice that might touch one heart or save one soul or deliver one person from continually hoping that they can change the abuser. It is not in our power to change anybody. Everyone has that in their own will. To desire to change comes from the abuser, should come from that abuser. But many a times you find that the abuser is never remorseful. They're never accepting of their faults. They're never willing to look inwardly to see that they are the culprit of everything that's happening in their relationship. But they project everything that they do onto their victim, thereby living almost seemingly happily while the victim is in anguish. This, I believe, can end with making it obvious and making it quite evident by talks like the one I've just done. I will leave some snippets at the end of this video of people, of women, strong, beautiful, vibrant, very, very well-to-do, and people who seem to have everything to live for, who ended up giving up their lives. Whether they believe that that was what was going to happen. Some of them ended up dying without even wishing that upon themselves, but they took actions that led to their own demise while in the toxic relationship. And to all these women and men who have suffered such fate, I'm here to say, may your souls rest in peace, and I pray and hope you're in a better place, away from all of the injustice and all of the pain. Thank you so much for tuning in to Cannonball Diva Chronicles. I sign out now, and I hope that you have a very good week ahead.